today I'm gonna show you a fun challenge, which is painting a full portrait with only 30 brushstrokes. So I found out about this kind of exercise or challenge on Instagram when I was scrolling on Instagram, and I saw this guy painting a full portrait, like doing a study with only 30, using 30 brushstrokes. And so I thought it looked really fun, so I wanted to give it a try. So mind you, I've never really tried this before, and I've been painting portraits for a while. So I was kind of curious. So here, I was trying before, because I used to do a lot of thumbnails. I'm kind of used to painting like this. The whole idea with you only having 30 brushstrokes is that you have to focus on the most important stuff. You can't really waste your time on the details or the things that deep down or you progressively learn that are not important as some other things. Like here on this portrait, I was focusing on the main separation on the face, like that shadow, half of the face is in shadow and the other half is catching light. So that's what I was mostly trying to focus on. And I really wanted to try this because I thought it was going to reframe my mindset when it came to adding detail and to the level of rendering, because I feel like I have been falling over too much rendering, because too much detail is actually a thing. I think having too much detail in your paintings can really get you in the wrong direction. Sometimes can harm your aesthetic, your whole art style, and get you into a more boring route. So here I'm just trying to just detach from realism and just trying to be more abstract with my brush strokes and stuff. So I should talk a bit more about the process here. So I'm right now just moving into like the 15 brush stroke, and I've already kind of mapped the whole face with this. I'm kind of used to painting like this, as I said, because of the thumbnail exercise that I always do, because it forces you to simplify the main thing, kind of sketching the main the overall shapes with only like brush strokes and paints. Which, by the way, I want to say I'm doing this brushstroke challenge. A few rules that I established for myself, where in case somebody asks or complains about me not doing it right. One brushstroke is just basically me, as a single brushstroke, not lifting the pen. It's just as much as I can do without lifting the pen. That is one brushstroke. I'm also using opacity, and I'm allowing myself to use opacity. I'm using a normal brush, and I'm also not going to Control C. So if I mess up, if I do something that I don't like, I can't back up. I just try to deal with it and try to find a way around it. And so I was trying to be very careful. I'm normally not this slow when painting, although this took me like 15 minutes for each of these faces. And so yeah, here I mostly got, I wasn't fully satisfied with some areas here, but I feel like I got the overall phase and stuff. So here we're on the very last brush stroke, but I don't know, I didn't really like it that much. It kind of looked like a clown because of the redness on the whole nose and stuff. So I was like, okay, I was already a little bit more warmed up, so I'm just gonna try doing another one with a bit of a fresher mind, fresher brain. And something very important that, it doesn't only apply with this challenge, which I really suggest you try. This challenge is really fun. But you always want to start from back to front. So from the background, you always want to start with the background. That's just going to make it easier. Because I was looking at the guy that I told you I found on Instagram, and this guy was not starting from the background. He was doing it last or something. And that kind of really bugged me a little, because it will throw you off in general when you don't start with the background. It's just gonna be like, it's gonna make the whole workflow a lot harder. But anyways, here I kind of messed the colors. I'm also not color picking directly from the photo, so I'm picking my own colors, making my own color decisions. So again, if I mess up, I have to deal with it, and I have to go back and fix it. I have to waste my brush strokes here. So I'm counting the brushstrokes here on the right side, as you can see. So I don't forget how many brushstrokes I made to that point. Here you can see I messed up the color on the of the arm, so I had to kind of switch it back. And I was trying to play around with it. I was trying to, okay, I'm just not gonna waste paint. I'm not gonna waste a brushstroke to paint like the slightly darker value on like the pants, the white clothing thing. So I'm just gonna leave it like that. And I'm always focusing on, again, trying to find a way of carving the face of the shape, the face of the shape of the face. So here in this case, trying to do it, cut half of the face in light and the other half in shadow. And it is very tricky. Like this type of photos that are this type of lighting that has very low contrast. It's very low contrast. You see like faces like this where you don't have a very strong and dramatic light. These are the hardest to paint. So you will always run into the problem that it might look flat if you don't know how to be subtle enough and how to add depth, or how to even exaggerate some of the depthness. Uh, you're gonna run into a problem that it's gonna be look a little bit flat. At least if you compare it to like a more dramatic light that will allow you to make like more dramatic, again, changes in lights, and that will suggest depth in an easy way, even when you're using very simple values, when you're not using too many values at the very beginning, when you're doing like a distillation, which if you pay attention to what I'm doing to my whole process, I'm basically doing some sort of distillation here. So I'm starting with very simple brushstrokes, of course. And with the hair, well, I also had to fix kind of like the color of the hair. And you know, I think this one came out okay for the amount of the difficulty of this. I was mostly worrying about the proportions more than the rest. So especially at the beginning when I was carving the background, I was focusing that the proportions were looking all right before anything else, because if your proportions, the proportions are, I think, the main thing that's going to make the whole painting look off if you don't get it right. So I feel like it's a very important thing to you know, get down before the rest. So I'm doing the same thing with this one portrait. Of course, I'm starting with like this rectangle thing because you know, I don't think starting right off the bat without any at least some sort of guide like this to at least not mess up my edges, I think just makes it a little bit easier. I don't think it counts as a brushstroke. But yeah, anyways, you're starting with the background again. And what you really want to focus on when you're painting, like let's say here I'm painting faces. I'm not really thinking of faces in the conventional way. I'm not thinking of faces as, okay, I'm going to paint the facial features. You really have to forget what you're looking at, and you want to just only see the shapes and the values. So here, basically, and also the skin tones, you know, it's like, okay, you're not painting a person at all. You're just painting the random blobs of light that you see. And all of this that I'm talking about, all of this, all of the lessons that this exercise will teach you will be 100% applicable to your actual paintings, to your normal paintings. So I really suggest you to try this exercise. It was actually very funny. It really surprised me how funny it was. I think there was I don't know if it was Sargent, but some like classical painters did this exercise to, you know, understand how the basic forms of you know, shapes and light and value work. So yeah, here I'm again just trying to use some of the shapes, like the shape of the hair and these shadows, to carve the other, like the face, the shape of the face as well, because it was looking a little bit wonky. And it's very hard to get it 100% right, you know, right away without polishing it a little bit, without carving extra a little bit more the head of here in this case. And so yeah, here you can see I added that little highlight there on like the nose area and like the cheeks, and that is just going to add depth instantly because, you know, of the contrast. And what I'm going to do in a while is doing the same thing, but with a bit of a darker value on like the like a saturated reddish dark value on like the nose as well, and the eye socket. And here, for some reason I feel like it. I'm kind of going sometimes from bright to dark. And I always say to not do this when you're painting digitally or when you're doing oil paintings, especially when you're doing oil paintings. But let's say here digitally, there's no reason to go from bright to dark. But I feel like when you are on this sketching stage, going from light to dark, it's actually kind of easier. But however, when you're rendering, when you're trying to add depth and stuff, it's not as ideal. It's not really convenient. But sometimes I feel like to be more subtle, going from the lightest value in slowly adding some darker values, very slowly, very subtly, is just going to make the whole thing a lot easier, the whole process a lot easier. And so, yeah, I was very happy with this one portrait, so I decided to kind of render it a little bit more, spend a few more minutes rendering it. Well, not quite rendering, I wouldn't call it rendering, but just like adding more shapes. Yeah, adding a bit more of smaller shapes and polishing it a little bit more here. And I was messing around with some other brushes. I was messing around with the round brush, so I was looking a little bit. Yeah, I was getting kind of tired of using the round brush all the time, because not because it didn't work, but because it was making my art style a little bit dull. So what I ended up doing to try to make it more dynamic is just adding a little bit of texture. And so I modified the brush here in Photoshop. I just went to like the brush settings and added like the color dynamic option. I turned that on, and it just made the whole thing a lot more. You can see the texture here, and like it's like the heavy paint brush. But anyways, here is the final result. I was kind of happy with this. I mean, it's not a full render illustration or anything, but it looks kind of cool. Here are the rest of the paintings. And also, if you like my art and you like, the way that I explain things, and you feel like you need some help to improve your art, you can go to my Discord community in the description. I'm doing coaching sessions there. I'm doing one-to-one coaching. So I'll basically just have a look at your art, and we'll hop into calls, and I'll give you real-time feedback. It's really cool. If you want me to take you by the hand and guide you through your painting journey, through your art journey, I really suggest you join. It's going to help you a lot. So check that link. See you in the next video.